All right, we'll give it another minute. Okay, so why don't, and Beth is here, right, Beth? Yeah, I see her. Why don't we do introductions? Yeah. Do introductions today by putting your name and organization in the chat. Oh, it looks nice. It's beautiful out right now, but someone told me it was going to get humid later. I don't know if that's true. I hope not. All right, so I think we'll get started. Again, if you want to put your name and if you have an organization that you're representing, to put that in the chat. And I'll just review the agenda for us. We are going to have the bulk of the meeting is going to be led by Beth and Building Bright Futures, and they're going to present the policy recommendations for the State Advisory Council. So Beth will walk us through those. We'll have opportunity for some questions and discussion. And then following that, Beth is going to give us an update on BBF's role in the finance study that has started and how that relates to the Early Childhood State Advisory Council, the action plan, our work. And then we'll have agency updates from the Child Development Division and the Agency of Education, and opportunity for any other agency partners that are on today, and then just committee member updates as well today. So that's our agenda. We do have a couple people joining by phone. Eddie Gale is joining by phone, and Taylor from the Alliance is joining instead of Matt Levin today, and she is also joining by phone. So, all right. So Beth, I think I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you. You guys have my audio? All good? I'm not in my office, clearly. It's great to see you all this morning. I'm Beth Truzansky, Deputy Director of Building Bright Futures, and really excited to share a kind of developmental draft of the policy recommendations. And I'll tell you a little bit about the policy recommendations, the purpose, and process, and then we'll do a screen share and share kind of what we have so far. You know, in Building Bright Futures' role as advisor to the governor, legislature, and administration, policy recommendations are a tool to be able to communicate the key issues and opportunities that early childhood stakeholders identify can be addressed in the next year or so through policy change. And so Building Bright Futures has gone through a process of gathering input from our stakeholders from the whole network. That includes regional councils and VCAP committees like this one, and to be able to synthesize kind of the key messages and needs and gaps, to be able to communicate those in policy recommendations that are then kind of synthesized, and where we get feedback from the different groups to try and get the words and the language to a place that we feel like capture the essence of what is needed, kind of to the right level of specificity, right? Like not overly specific and not overly broad. And then eventually brought to the State Advisory Council for endorsement. The State Advisory Council is a public-private group. And so certainly there's a lot of work that happens in advance of bringing the policy recommendations to, so that, you know, ideally at that point, there's no surprises that these policy recommendations have been fully vetted. At this point, they haven't really been fully vetted. We are really starting to bring the concepts that we've heard from the network to be able to review kind of what the key issues and gaps and opportunities are. So that's what I'm really bringing to you today as the Early Learning and Development Committee that is kind of the key state stakeholder group that stewards Goal 3 of the Vermont Early Childhood Action Plan, which is, and so the way that we have organized policy recommendations this year is under each goal. And so I will, because I feel like there's a lot of interconnectedness, I will review all of the goals with you and then open up for some feedback and discussion, trying to avoid like too much wordsmithing, though definitely welcome your feedback and can share written a written draft of these. We're really just kind of pulling these together. So I wasn't in a place to kind of share them in advance. So any questions about kind of the process? But at this point, your feedback of like, yeah, this kind of gets to what I'm hearing and experiencing, or this isn't quite, this isn't quite getting to it, or, like the feedback in terms of the level of specificity and the level of need is helpful. How's that? Any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and move through these. I will read and give you a chance to review. How does that look in terms of level readability? That's okay. Thank you, Jen. Okay, so the draft policy recommendations under Goal 1, which is all children have a healthy start, are twofold. Not at the moment, thank you. So one is fund the critical elements of coordination beyond case management to best serve the whole child and family across service sectors. So we're talking about, this is a policy recommendation that is coming out of in some work that the CIS data brief that is actually just getting published today. Make the critical elements of CIS other than case management that provide service coordination reimbursement services through Medicaid. So that is one. I'm going to move pretty quickly through Goal 1 so we can have time for discussion around Goal 3. The other one under Goal 1 is around housing. So respond to the housing crisis that is pervasive in our communities and address and work to reduce the trauma of homelessness. And then we have 2 specifics under that piece. Okay. So Goal 2, families and communities play a leading role in children's well-being. One is require each legislatively mandated board, committee, decision-making body making policy or program decisions with implications for the well-being of families with young children to have at least one parent representative with lived experience. The representatives' lived experience should be as current as possible and should support their ability to weigh in regarding relevant age ranges of children and or experience with relevant systems. So this is coming out of our Families and Communities Committee. And the next one is provide commensurate compensation for families participating in engagement. I'm going to pause there and close it. Okay. So those are certainly relevant and important, but again, I'm kind of going to move through these so that you can kind of get the whole picture, and then we can review certain sections and would love your feedback as you have it. So Goal 3, all children and families will have access to high quality opportunities that meet their needs. That's the Goal 3 of the VCAP. The first one is to prioritize and invest in the current early childhood education workforce to ensure the field is justly compensated, well supported, and valued as leaders and partners in the early childhood system by making strategic and substantial investments to bolster the compensation of the early childhood workforce, and investing in proven professional development and support models such as practice-based coaching, mentorship, special accommodations grants, early childhood and family mental health consultation and treatment, and early MTSS. The next one is strengthen and extend the STARS revision work by recommitting to learning from national best practices of how to recognize, support, and invest in high quality early childhood education programs as a state. When relaunched, this process should center on dismantling systemic racist and inequitable tools and structures, and building a system that supports early childhood education programs with providing the highest quality teacher-child interactions possible through a continuous quality improvement lens. And the third recommendation drafted under goal 3 is respond to the mental health challenges and resilience building needs facing young children and their families in our communities by investing in efforts to recruit a diverse mental health workforce reflective of the communities they serve, diversity of race, ethnicity, culture, sexuality, orientation, identity, socioeconomic status, etc. Continuing to increase Medicaid reimbursement rates for mental health services to adjust for the higher cost of providing services associated with inflation. And investing in trauma and resilience training for family serving providers, including mental health, education, et cetera, to be better prepared to respond to the increased mental health needs of children due to the pandemic. Invest in translation services for training programs to promote equitable and broad access to training. How's my pace? Is that okay? And then goal 4 in the VCAP says the early childhood system will be integrated, well-resourced, and data informed. And the 3 specific recommendations in goal 4 is, as legislation is considered related to Vermont's early childhood governance infrastructure, the legislature must prioritize accountability by tasking a specific entity to monitor governance transition with responsibilities that include developing a concrete transition plan with accountability and metrics, process and success, prioritizing cross-sector stakeholder engagement, monitoring any and all transitions over time and reporting annually to the legislature, defining and measuring success in process and outcomes using a continuous quality improvement framework, and ensuring alignment with a vision articulated in the Vermont Early Childhood Action Plan. So that's a recommendation specific to the systems analysis. The second one is prioritize collective legislative action coordination related to early childhood administration, governance, and potential investments by holding joint hearings. And this is kind of a legislative concept that we're kind of still exploring feasibility around. So getting some feedback there, instead of presenting to multiple committees individually. And then the last one is respond to inequities in data collection and reporting in order to better represent the experiences of people of color and other marginalized communities in Vermont. So again, working to get some more feedback specifically from the Office of Racial Equity and other partners on this one. So I will pause. That's a lot to digest in a couple minutes. And would love if people have kind of clarifying questions or things that they want me to go back to get clarity, and welcome input. Any clarifying questions?
I have a clarifying question. Sorry, I should have raised my hand individually. Reactions. There was one around the Medicaid reimbursement rates that just made me think, like, are all of these investments, are all of these recommendations things that can specifically be acted on by the state legislature versus things that need to be, that are federal decisions or administrative decisions? I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah,
this is just for the legislature, also for the administration, how to think about it. And
yeah, no, they are not recommendations that are all require legislative action. They are actions that sometimes are administrative purview or control as well.
Okay, and they're all things that can be handled on this recommendations that are at the state level rather than at the federal level.
That is the goal.
Okay.
To write it in language that we have control statewide. Yeah.
Okay, Thank you.
Good question. Other questions? Okay. Are there certain sections that you want me to do the screen share so you can look at some of that language again, and then we can shift to feedback around language or concept?
Can you just scroll down to goal 4 for a sec?
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks.
And Beth, I know you said you were able to send out a draft. Is that something that you can get to Sherry and she could just send out with the notes?
Yeah, I can definitely do that. Thank you.
And Beth, I had to step away for about 30 seconds, and maybe I missed it, but I was looking specifically around if there was anything about, because I see the current workforce, I'm wondering about sort of the pipeline into and recruitment of workforce piece.
Yes, there's more language here around workforce and training and compensation. It's named a little bit more specifically around mental health. But again, if you feel like there are gaps and there's actions that statewide that we're missing in here, that's feedback that I'm looking for. So
I guess I feel
there's a lot movement, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there might be a gap around that in terms of, assuring that we have investments in programs that are helping us to recruit, train, right, attain folks into the early child. I know that we have grant programs and things that are running to help, folks get through school and pay for school and come out ready, but even into those entry positions, I'm wondering about those. I think specifically of things like a pre-apprenticeship program, other training programs, step up to childcare programs, those kind of things that are, and even just general.
Right. I think that the
resources.
question, I agree with you, Sonia, that, right. Yeah. And so I think the kind of guidance is what's the opportunity in the next year, right? Like there's been a lot of investments and funds are just starting to flow. So what's the investment in the next year, or what are the specifics of things that are not yet happening or are kind of on the verge of needing kind of stakeholder, a call to stakeholders. So would love guidance around what that language might look like and what the need is. I see a couple hands up. I don't know who came first, but Sherry and Cynthia.
I would just wanted to piggyback on what Sonia was saying. And I think Becky and I brought this up when the co-chairs all met to get another preview of this earlier. I think the word that's missing in that second bullet in investing in proven professional development support is preparation programs. Like that is because these, what I heard Sonia describing is more around like the investments in getting people ready to be in the field. And these that are identified are more things that tend to happen as people are already working in the field. Yeah. So that's one thing. And I do think there's a recruitment piece that's really missing in the language.
So it'd be great for this group or to be able to capture. And Jen, I'm going to rely on your note taking because I'm doing my screen share and I don't have another screen, but to capture some of this around what's needed at this point. And certainly this committee has talked at length about that. So thank you. Cynthia.
Thanks, Beth. I'm wondering, and my apologies, it might be in goal 4, but I'm wondering about a recommendation or how the financing study might impact or integrate with this work, and just thinking about as I think about sort of the evolution of these recommendation policies, there's some policy work in here, and there's certainly investment work in here. And so I'm just thinking about how these recommendations will all hang together with that financing study. And on an aside or complementary to that, I just noticed there's nothing around hunger in food security in this version. And so we're working on several levels to sort of integrate food security with financing and governance. So just trying to think about those things, but that might have fallen off of the policy recommendation list, but that are still integral to, supporting healthy kids in their development in early childhood settings, and how we might activate either the finance study or the governance work. So I don't know if you can speak to that. It's a really big question, but I'm just pondering it.
Yeah, point taken. Certainly, I think this is the challenge with developing these policy recommendations year to year is what is the opportunity in this next year, not wanting to publish the same recommendations every year if they're not responded to, but what is that opportunity? So if you feel like there is a focus on housing, I have not heard specifically that the finance study will get to that level around food security. Certainly, I know the work that is happening. So, the finance study is just barely underway. So we just don't have a whole lot of information about what level of specificity in terms of cost modeling that they will get to. But
Okay.
Point taken. Yeah.
No worries. And I would just want to, I'm actually not like the primary lead on that. Hunger Free Vermont is, and I was just looking quickly, they're just not here. So I just want to make sure, I know they're having conversations with Let's Grow Kids around this and their work. So just wanting to make sure that somehow we, if it's not in a policy recommendation, we find another alternative mechanism. So thanks.
Yeah. Yep.
Max, I'm going to have Max has a comment or question, and then I have some things in the chat that I can read that people are asking.
Thank you. Yeah, for some reason I can't find the virtual raise hand button, but I'll work on that another time. Yeah, regarding the recruitment side of things, maybe it's in there, but we spoke with a provider yesterday, and they mentioned the topic of centers competing with schools for staff, and I'm wondering if that is something that's thought of generally in these discussions, like how centers can compete for staff. It seems like it's a very tough thing.
I wonder if someone else in the group wants to respond to your experience with that, and I will pull down the screen share. We can respond quickly, Max, to your question, and then see if that is something that is needed in policy recommendations at the moment.
Janet and Sonia both have their hands up. Yeah.
I'll just offer that I was earlier in now several months ago, because it was in the spring, met with a group from Washington County of early childhood education program leaders, and with the governor's office and CDD leadership and Agency of Education leadership, and everybody was aware that this is a tension, and public schools are having their own troubles recruiting educators as well. This is really tied to the need to create an equitable compensation across settings, which is really the work of the Advancing Early Childhood Education Profession Task Force, and then has been working on. So definitely, I guess I would just offer it's definitely in discussion and has been flagged sort of at the highest levels, which is why I'll take this moment to sort of say that's why from Vermont AYC last legislative session and coming to this one has been, and in our discussions with the administration, has been really emphasizing the fact that we need a coordinated workforce development strategy for early childhood education through the whole pipeline. Right now, we have all sorts of different programs, and which is awesome. Like, it is amazing, right? Like we've got this plethora of opportunities right now in terms of some of the supports for people. But we need to look at that comprehensively, smooth out that system, think about filling any of the gaps that are still there, and we need to package it for people in a more comprehensive way. And it really shouldn't vary by and get to a place where things don't vary so much by setting is the vision for that. But Sonia probably has personal experience with this. I'm sure she could share.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Janet, everything you just said, right? It really basically 99% comes down to competitive compensation packages, bottom line. And I struggle with it. I don't know a program that doesn't struggle with it to some degree. There have been some great opportunities with some of the grants that have come for folks to really dig in. At least it's what I did at my program, and really boost compensation and offer benefits to be more competitive. But we still have quite a ways to go. And I think, you know, and maybe Sherry can speak to, you know, the efforts too, in addition to VACI or in conjunction with, you know, advancing as a profession and legislation that will sort of be kicking off some of that and addressing that compensation piece.
Thank you.
It's all about investment, right, Sonia? That's what it comes down to. I wanted to read, Amy has put a few comments in here that I want to make sure that everyone saw. I know some people are on the phone. So she wondered in goal 4, would there be room to include children with disabilities when looking at inequities and marginalized groups within the data? So that was feedback. Janet had feedback she just summarized for us in the chat. Becky has some feedback in there about that workforce recruitment and incoming workforce as well. And then Amy had a comment in the chat. Goal 2 is referring to high quality, creating equitable systems, but it does not specifically include the word inclusion when talking high quality. Also, when speaking of teacher-child relationship building, creating a sense of membership and belonging is a part of that. So those are some of the
those are all noted. Thank you.
Yeah, it definitely, goal 2 certainly references that inclusion part. And it's I just noticed that it didn't specifically include that word when we're talking high quality. We didn't, you know, I just thought, well, maybe there's room for that as well. But
yeah, no, I appreciate your comments, Amy. Thank you. I'd be curious. This is great feedback. Super helpful. Would love kind of any high level reflections. Is there something in here that you were like, oh yeah, I'm psyched that that's included? You know, I think we got a little sense of kind of what we feel like is missing, but any other reactions from ELD members about what resonated with you here? Cynthia?
I just wanted to share that I actually really psyched the policy recommendations have housing. I'm really psyched about the workforce, but that's not a surprise to me. So I'm really psyched to see that there's a focus in housing. I think that impacts so much of our field and what we do and the good care that we want to provide. So I'm thrilled to see that. Thanks.
I guess Cynthia took the words out of my brain here. I'm also excited about housing, but I was also psyched to see a lot of recommendations around CIS and around mental health recruitment of workers, because you guys have heard me say many times as I work at a mental health agency that we need workforce too. So to help the kiddos and to support the amazing programs that we have out there. So glad to see that that's in there.
Janet, and then Amy.
Sure. I wanted to flag the language that's included about around the STARS revision and the need for that revision to encompass the best practices and make sure that we're not repeating well, I guess all the language and learning and resources that have been have really crystallized, I think, on the national level around QRIS systems in the last couple of years, and make sure that the system that we're creating is, right now the thinking is that it's fully implemented 2 years from now. And so I think we need to make sure what we're creating provides that bridge, that impetus for continuous quality improvement in a really inclusive and equitable way. And that we need that. So we want to make sure that whatever we're building includes that, especially because if, again, we don't want to have something be fully implemented 2 years from now based on information from 6 years ago. And so I think I do appreciate that recommendation that adjustment is made to the current track that it's on.
Jumping off what Janet said, I agree. I was excited to see, some sort of measurement in reference to continuous improvement efforts. So we're constantly looking and reassessing how we're helping children. So I thought that was great that that's in there.
I want to add, I will just say, I ditto to what Janet said. I was really happy to see the STARS piece in there. I think it's really worth it to have the best system implemented, because there has been so much new information about best practices and having an equitable continuous improvement system. So I think that's really important. Beth, did you see in the chat that Kate had asked to
Yeah,
spell out?
I did.
Yeah, okay.
Around spelling out
Sure.
early MTSS. Yes.
Yeah.
Certainly.
And then Janet would like to see the.
Yeah, you got it. Hang on. All right, how's that? Jen, is there a specific section you're looking for?
That was the section. And I just wanted to make sure that what I'm saying reflects what's really in here, since I just saw it the once now. And so obviously, I think the strategic and substantial investments to bolster compensation is on behalf of the members of Vermont Early Childhood Association for the Education of Young Children. We certainly support that. Would love to have the conversation about what is the role for the state in ensuring that early childhood educators as a key workforce in the state get that increased compensation, recognizing again that this is 1,000 separate employers, maybe not quite that many, but it is a lot of different employers that we're talking about. And so it is complex to figure out how to bolster compensation, but there are ways to do it that are both strategic and substantial that we should definitely be exploring.
Awesome, thank you. The feedback is really helpful. Again, this is I have to say, one of the most challenging tasks is to kind of capture what are some of the key messages that are coming out and figure out what is kind of timely and digestible and all of that. So thank you for being kind of our test in sharing this publicly. Yeah, Kate, would love your feedback.
Hi, thanks. So I was just reading the first bullet here, and thank you for pulling it up again. It's very helpful. So to prioritize and invest in the current early childhood education workforce to ensure the field is justly compensated, well supported, and valued as, I would really like to recommend we put the word valued as experts, leaders, and partners in the early childhood system. So because we're all, expert. I mean, families are experts with their child, and providers are experts, you know, with whatever discipline they're, you know, looking at, whatever. So just a suggestion with that there, especially if we're looking at justly compensated, the expertise of that and how that is, you know, step up and folks attaining certain criteria and knowledge and coursework and all that for various levels like EC1, 2, and 3, that would make sense. So just a thought.
Okay. Well, thank you all. Really appreciate your engagement and your feedback. I will send a copy. Again, this is draft form and it's changing every day, to be honest, but would, if looking at it again, brings any other comments or reflections, feel free to send them over. We are kind of in this phase of getting feedback from VCAP committees over the next month. So it'll kind of continue to receive edits and eventually bring it to the State Advisory Council for first review, probably in October is my guess. So there you go.
Thank you, Beth. You have a couple more agenda items to cover.
Okay. I don't have the agenda up. So talking about the systems analysis. Yep.
And, the finance study and how it relates to the systems analysis is the next.
Yeah. All right. So want to thank Early Learning and Development Committee as their childcare and early childhood education systems analysis was completed and presented to the legislature July 1st. And then we did a briefing with the Nasha and Elliott, the consultants, on I think it was July 13th. So if you didn't catch it the first time, the briefing is recorded, the report is, all of that stuff is on our website, on the systems analysis kind of page on our website, which I can reshare that link in a sec. So again, this committee with the Early Childhood Interagency Coordinating Team and a few additional folks served as the advisory group to the systems analysis, and that was really helpful and productive. I did do a quick survey at the end of that process about your experience, and your feedback was really helpful. So thank you for those who responded to that survey, both helpful to BBF as kind of who were tasked to convene that the advisory committee, as well as to the consultants. The next step to this process is a finance study. The Joint Fiscal Office was tasked with putting out an RFP and hiring a contractor to conduct this finance study. Rand Corporation was identified to do that. They will be convening an advisory committee. And so again, part of the eval from the systems analysis advisory committee was to kind of identify who was interested in serving on that advisory committee. Clearly the focus is a bit more kind of around economic and fiscal forecasting. So a little bit of a different skill set. To my knowledge, they have not confirmed who will serve on that advisory committee or set a schedule for meetings. So if you haven't gotten any communication, you're not out of the loop. I'm waiting on word back from Chris Doss from Rand on kind of status from that. BBF's role is quite a bit different than it was with the systems analysis. With the systems analysis, we were actually named in the law to kind of serve as the conveners and oversee that process. And there was some funding that went with it. That is not the case in the finance study. So we are kind of on hand to support and advise, but won't be convening the advisory committee or kind of in a formal kind of role supporting RAND. Of course, we're kind of available, but not quite as formally or as in a complete way that we did with the systems analysis. So that is kind of the update. The finance study, it's a pretty ambitious task in a pretty short time frame. I would hope that that RAND's working on kind of data sharing agreements and developing relationships with agency folks that they're going to need data from to be able to do their forecasting. So that's what I have to share at the moment. Hey, James. You have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Beth. Beth, I'm really pleased that you're still, and Building Bright Futures are still connected with the RAND analysis, even if it's somewhat separate. It makes me wonder whether or not there's any system efficiencies that are built into your policy recommendations that could lower costs for the whole system, and those benefits, those financial benefits, could roll over to either increasing the salaries of professionals, or more importantly, I think the other one is subsidizing parents' costs for the childcare system. So have you at all looked at kind of your policy recommendations from a high level of just, is there any easy gains in here?
That's a great question. I think that's in part what the finance study is doing. And so there may be policy recommendations, whether it's for this year or in the future. I think that's what the legislature is certainly hoping, that the finance study will identify kind of the cost of providing services and other ways to do that.
And Beth, is it also perhaps related to the governance study and, efficiencies? It feels like could be achieved with just a change in how the system is governed.
Yeah, I think we're all pretty excited to have the finance study, to be able to have the conversation and be able to take the governance and the systems analysis report and have the information when the finance study is complete. And that's really what the legislature is looking to be able to take those two pieces and synthesize those together. So I would imagine that we will be talking quite a bit about this come January or February. All right, are we good on those pieces? Yeah, awesome. Yeah. All right, well, thank you for having me. I can stay on for a little bit, but I am gonna have to hop off. We're having an all staff retreat, and so I'm gonna go and be with my team this morning and look to the notes to get caught up if there are other pieces and updates to bring back to my team. So thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Okay, we are going to shift to Nicole, is going to give us some updates from the Child Development Division.
Hello. All right. So the first thing I have on my list is the STARS revision and the stakeholder groups and how that has been going. I have attended all of the meetings thus far. And we've gotten some really good feedback, both from the meetings, and then also we have a collector tool or survey that goes up afterwards, where we've gotten some considerable feedback about indicators and looking at criteria going forward. And so we're really not done yet. We're still looking back at what are all of the different pieces of feedback we've gotten. We've also continued to consult with federal TA. We had a meeting yesterday. Thank you. I can't see Luann, but thank you for inviting me to listen in on that. with some of the folks from Build that were able to give even some additional feedback. I will also respond to, I saw the VCAP goal, and I know we just got some feedback in this meeting. I heard what Janet had to say, and I think that we really are moving in a direction of listening to national best practice and understanding what it means to make some major shifts in the program. But we'll also say that I think that it will need to be a phased approach. And so I'm really excited to be making progress towards that goal. I think being able to work with the stakeholder groups and update the rules for QRIS in Vermont, as well as working towards introducing a continuous quality improvement component and working towards bringing in a coaching component are both very important steps towards this. So that's really where we're at with STARS. We do not have a stakeholder meeting in August. Our next convening will be in September. And in between now and then, there will be some materials coming out about how we've continued to refine the indicators and criteria that we're looking to propose for the revision. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to pause and take any questions, and then I can move on to CDDIS. I see no hands. Okay. So the Child Development Division Information System, CDDIS, launched July 3rd. And by launched, I mean we launched our minimal viable product. So that's something that I know that has been a little confusing for some folks, is that the interface, the functionality of the first module, which is for childcare financial assistance in CDDIS, will be continued to shift. It'll continue to change. It'll continue to evolve. So this isn't the final product for that module. We are working towards that. Also working towards some bug fixes in there that we are well aware of. You may have seen an email that went out on August 1st around federal poverty level being updated because of the original coding being the 2021 income guidelines. So we are officially, as of August 1st, into the 2022 income guidelines. The chart is posted on the website. Happy to give the link to Sherry so you can have that readily available. Also, an email went out this morning at 8 o'clock around understanding payment structure. And I just want to say thank you here. We had some help in review from the Vermont Early Childhood Network leaders that were able to review and help us put together a fact sheet on CDDIS, which has some really helpful information in it about family share, provider rate agreements, things that have shifted a little bit as we've moved into CDDIS. So also happy to provide that link if you didn't get the email, or just so you can have it in multiple places. Yeah, so those are all the recent updates I have on CDDIS. Any questions on that?
Nicole, I have a question that have been brought. So I understand that there's been overpayments just, you know, as the first payments are going out and just some kinks in the system. And just wondering how that's being you know, I guess what our concern is that programs may not be aware it's an overpayment, and sort of what's the communication going out to let people know. I know it went out in July. There was something that went out that said there could be adjustments that are made, but that was like July 22nd. I haven't seen, maybe in this new thing that went out at 8, maybe there's information in there. But one of the things that we've experienced in the past was when there's been sometimes overpayments, programs don't realize it, and then they get stuck of supposed to pay it back. And we've just had some concerns that they may get stuck in a position that they didn't realize that, and now they don't have the money to pay back. So I'm just wondering if there's going to be more communication. Is there a way for some of the partners to communicate about that so programs understand that could be a possibility? There's so much happening at once, and we're just afraid that some might get stuck in a position, just being unaware.
My understanding is that programs are being communicated to individually based on their individual situation. But I can assure you, if you haven't heard anything now, I would let providers know that they shouldn't worry that they're going to be in this hole where they owe back money. I wish that Carolyn was here, but I can't see her right now. But happy to get back to you and make sure that I'm correct in this. But my understanding is that all of the providers that have had some sort of underpayment or overpayment that might need to be reconciled have been contacted individually. So if folks haven't been contacted, I'll make sure that they are either going to be, but I think that they should have heard something by now.
That's great.
So those are the updates that I have on my list. If there are other updates that folks are wondering about from CDD, I'm happy to take questions. Otherwise, Kate Rogers is here to speak on early multi-tiered systems of support. I'm sorry, Kate, I still want to use the acronym. I won't. And on S283.
All right. Hi, Nicole. Thanks.
Hi, Kate.
There we go.
Can I ask one quick question? Sorry, Nicole.
Yeah.
So I just, my question is just that I know that the, I think the fact sheet is great, and some, I really appreciate some of the quick, tight, here's a question you had, here's some information that we're getting that's happening from CDD. But I also noticed some of the emails, they come from Miranda, and it's clear, if you have a question, this is the person you should get back to. While some of them are just here's some information from the CDD team.
Mm-hmm.
And it does feel like on some of those emails, it would be helpful if there was either we knew who it was from, you know what I mean? If there's a sense of who this is from, a person, so you would know who to ask questions of, or to say, if you have, to use those emails in a way that there's an understanding of can you write back to this email and get a question answered? If you had one, and use those emails as a way to keep the communication flow going. I think that's been just, especially with the folks at CDD maybe not being as, with all the turnover, people aren't sure who to go to with their questions. And this could be another way that you guys could, that might help answer that question for people. So I thought.
Sure. And within this email, there are links to
Right.
the CDS support page and whatnot. But yes, happy to put some more direct, this is the person. And if you reply, you would get our communications person.
Yeah. So even maybe I'm just letting people know that, or I don't know, just something like that, that again makes it a little clearer that these are not intended to necessarily just be only one-way communications.
Mm-hmm.
Because the one I'm looking at, I see it just has the link to see the fact sheet, not the next step of this is a way to initiate a two-way conversation.
Yes, and I'm reading the FPL one, so you're correct. I don't see the link back, but
yeah. So
good
it's just a thought. I mean,
that's okay.
People can use their own judgment and resources, but as much as we make it easy for people, it's probably helpful.
That is good feedback, and I know that Naya, who is our communications person, would appreciate not getting all the emails. So yes.
There you go.
Oh. I'm just responding to Sonia as well. I don't know if you want to check your junk or spam, because it does come from our listserv, but it went out at 8:08.
I usually get all your stuff. I'm also looking in Nicole's emails. She gets them too, and she doesn't have anything yet either. So I just didn't know when it was referred. I just hadn't seen it yet.
Sure.
I'll check my spam.
happy to forward it along again too. And if others have had that same issue, let me know, but it appears to have gone out to the list. So.
Hmm.
All right, handing it over to Kate now.
Sure, thanks, Nicole. So I'll start with S283 that was signed off by the governor June 1st. And S283 I'm losing my words here, made an amendment to Title 16 for suspension and expulsion for young children under the age of 8. That included, it included public schools last year, but it also included, hold on a second, I'm getting a call. This year, the amendment includes the addition of private pre-K programs as well as independent schools. So it also, 283 also has BBF convening a suspension and expulsion committee that will be meeting beginning September twice a month through December, and then reporting out to the legislature in January. So those meetings will be starting. That's looking at suspension and expulsion for children under the age of 8. Some members have been identified in terms of who will be sitting on that committee. The charge of that committee would be to look at, of course, data that's coming in on suspension and expulsion for children under the age of 8, defining suspension and expulsion, and moving forward with any recommendations needed that the legislature might support efforts in order to diminish the likelihood of suspension and expulsion all for kids 8 years and under. So the next piece is early MTSS. So early MTSS is kind of the other hand of suspension and expulsion, because early MTSS provides the supports, practices, and systems necessary for programs and schools to increase their skill set in order to support young children's social and emotional welfare, development, competence, and confidence, so that the likelihood of suspension or expulsion is very highly diminished. So we have just executed, I'm very excited about this, executed a contract with the Pyramid Model Consortium. And Pyramid Model Consortium is a national technical assistance center group who also partners with the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations. And so we are receiving the expertise of the National Center in order to conduct training, practice-based coaching, and systems work for the next 2 years across the state for professional development. The focus of the contract with PMC is all of our universal pre-K programs. And so we're starting that everyone will be offered training on pyramid model practices. There's training every month from September through June. And those trainings will be shared. We'll send that out to Becky Millard so she has that to put on her networks so folks can access that as well. And but the first 3 months, September, October, and November, are specifically about the pyramid model tiers themselves, supporting nurturing and responsive relationships and within the environments, targeted supports at the secondary level, and then tertiary supports would include intensive supports, you know, looking at functional behavior assessments and writing response plans and things like that. So giving individuals the tools they need in their toolkit in order to really look at how they are approaching, responding, and supporting each and every child within their program, no matter what. So we're very excited about that. And if you want more information about that, just send myself or Amy Murphy an email. We can certainly give you more. We are in the process of identifying 8 implementation sites, and 5 to 6 right now are private pre-K programs, and 3 are school district programs. It was when we offered this opportunity out there, the school districts that we worked with offered that we work with their partnering programs, their private pre-K programs, as a collaborative effort, which we thought was just awesome. So we're still gathering that information, and we'll be putting out, we're working with CDD as well, but we'll put out a list as soon as that's all confirmed about who those implementation sites are. And those implementation sites will receive practice-based coaching, systems level coaching, and we'll also collect the data at the systems level, teacher implementation of the practice level, and the child level data from those 8 sites. So we'll have some data, again, to support the practice, to show the effectiveness and success of programs who then implement early MTSS to fidelity as the model. So very excited about that. More to come with early MTSS as we look forward to looking at the preschool development grant and supporting that effort as well. We just submitted another grant called the State Personnel Development Grant that's from the Office of Special Education Programs in Washington, and early MTSS has also been added for that grant as well, but that focuses for infants and toddlers. So all again, best practice and then tools to support and measure fidelity of the practice to show effectiveness of that work, we'll be able to benefit from if we get that grant. So cross your fingers on that one. So some good, exciting, yeah. Yes.
There's 2 questions. Janet wanted to know if this is ARPA funded. Did you say what the funding was? No.
I did not, and thank you, Janet. This funding for this round is coming from our title funds. So Title IV and Title II funds that are education funds. And we had to work hard to we applied for the funds internally at the Agency of Ed, and we really had to work hard into scrape up the dollars in order to really put this effort forward, because people believe in what this means and the outcomes for children, that it does, and research have shown that it happens. So those are the fundings that we are using right now. And hopefully some of those title funds, because those are, even though that's a federal grant that comes into the agency, we're hoping that some of those funds can be used now on an annual basis, as opposed to a one-time deal. So that's a hope. It's not confirmed yet, but that's where we like to look at it, because we have to make funding for early MTSS sustainable. We've always used grants, and we cannot use grants any longer because they go away, right? And then we're in the hole. So we have to figure out how to support early MTSS, the professional development, and all the pieces that go with it, especially the practice-based coaching, because we know that's where the money hit the road. It's right there. If we don't have the coaching, we can't ensure the implementation of those evidence-based practices to fidelity of the model. So that's expensive. We know practice-based coaching is expensive to do. So.
Kate, I have another question related to the policy recommendations that we just went through. I heard you say a couple times, investments to reduce suspension and expulsion. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure we call that out in any of those policy recommendations. I guess you could say some of the pieces in there might have that impact. But considering this group spent many of our sessions looking at different aspects of the impact of that, including the UVM study and other, and other discussions, I'm just wondering if we want to recommend to BBF that they relook at that and maybe include some language, because I think that's really important. The way that suspension and expulsion has been like viewed somewhat or talked about somewhat is about what programs aren't doing right or don't know how to do. And the other piece of that, though, is this, the state does need to make investments to reduce suspension and expulsion. It's not just up to the individual people that are trying to provide the care. So
Right. And Sherry, I absolutely agree with you. And if there is some way that we can connect the dots here on investments, given that Act 35 is brand new as well. I mean, the agency in collaboration with Nicole and her team, you know, we're pushing this out. You know, we're so happy we received the funds, because if we didn't have the funds to do this cohort of early MTSS, and now the requirement is that both public and private programs cannot suspend or expel children, we needed we have to offset that. We just can't say you can't do it and not give supports or resources out there. You just can't do that. That's not fair for anyone, right? Especially the children and families. So we were so happy that this happened. And so it's going down the same, you know, the path that it needs to go, but it still needs to be much more robust. So if there's any way that these proposed pieces for the legislature can include this language and show how it connects the dots, the trauma-informed piece in health too below, as well as the data piece, it's across the board. So
yeah, definitely. And Beth is going to watch the recording because she had to go to another meeting. So, and I will send her a note too to encourage her to watch that, because it impacts what she presented earlier. So thanks, Kate.
Yes. No, thank you very much. The other pieces, let me see, let me look at my note here. Oh, again, for suspension and expulsion, the Agency of Ed just disseminated to superintendents and independent school administrators a memo notifying them about the Title 16 change, meaning the Act 35 memo on suspension and expulsion, just allowing that for children under the age of 8. So that just went out this past week. Miranda Gray, Nicole, both agencies are working on a joint agency memo to be disseminated to public and private pre-K programs, and guidance will follow that as well. The early MTSS trainings will be a support part of that guidance that any UPK program can, and have the opportunity to take advantage of these trainings that we'll be putting out. So that is coming. And let me see.
Janet has a question in the chat. Janet, do you want to ask your question?
Sure, but it may just be a follow-up question. So Kate, if you were headed in a specific stream, my question is, the reason I asked about the ARPA funding is whether or not the other project was ARPA funded, right? Is because I remember in the memo on plans to use those resources, there was some money sort of set aside for an effort around social emotional learning. And I didn't know where that stood, if there's an update on that at all.
Yep, the school districts are still able to utilize their ARPA funds for the next, I think, through 25, I think. And the agency has developed a kind of like a logic kind of model plan that districts are submitting on recovery buckets. And they could use those funds to support social emotional well-being for their students, academic learning, and another bucket that I can't remember at the moment, but that's through school districts, and they can certainly utilize those funds. Absolutely.
Okay, so well, I think there's the money that was that's helpful for me to actually, I was not thinking of the money available through the school districts. I was thinking of, and maybe this is actually a question for Nicole is that the sort of the memo around how to use the ARPA discretionary funds that were within CCDF. There was one portion of it that was like, there'll be a social emotional learning element sort of co-designed by AOE and CDD, was my recollection. And maybe that's, things have already changed and my question is already out of date, but.
So Jana, I think you're referring to the original, I shouldn't call it the original, but there was a memo from 2021 about the overall like 29 million in ARPA discretionary with a breakdown of like the workforce programs from Act 45 and then other potential uses of the funding. Yes. So the mental health services that were proposed, that we were denied the money for that purpose. It was like 2.5 million. So that's something that we're still looking at options on the table for that. So that I think that's
okay,
what
that
you're
is what
talking
I'm asking
about.
about.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that is definitely what I'm asking about. Oh, interesting. Okay. Were you denied by the feds or denied by the state?
By the Joint Fiscal Committee, I believe.
By the
But
Joint okay.
This was like happened right before I came into this position. So I'm recalling things I've read, but yes.
Okay.
And Nicole, I think, and I could be wrong, I don't want to spread rumors, but I think what I heard was that there wasn't the capacity to implement what was desired. So it wasn't setting up a situation for success because there aren't the actual human resources to implement what the vision was with those dollars.
That sounds right. I don't know that I don't have all of the rationale right in front of me, but that sounds accurate. I know that my recollection is it had something to do with the hiring, right? So like our mental health system doesn't have the capacity. But yeah, so it was denied for that purpose.
Okay, sorry, great. So thank you. Apologies that I'm a little out of date. I'm not sure where I.
No, Jana, I think that's something that I sort of learned somewhat recently too. I think they were maybe looking at other opportunities. I don't know, but and really what it would do is set up an expectation that couldn't be realized.
Okay, well, it just reminds me actually that one of the comments on the policy document that I noted around like recruiting more diverse mental health professionals was just that like part of it was that we also have to like train more diverse mental health professionals, like that they like overall, I know maybe other people saw this recently, but I definitely like saw a study recently that was talking about how like, you know, it's like 4% of psychologists are like people of color. So it's like they don't exist to recruit. And so you have to invest in the training on the training side of things too for the policy. So that's why we're doing this call. There's no extra comment.
Yes. It's all related. I was part of a national call that was talking about a study that one of the primary stressors for early childhood educators is not having access to mental health supports and resources for the families they serve. Like, so it just like continues to it's just a cycle that we have to break and get out of. Any other questions for Kate? Kate, did you have more updates? Did we might have interrupted your flow here?
Just two more updates that I just thought about, just for informational updates, is that the kindergarten readiness survey, we call it Ready for K survey. We do have the final data now and we're in the process of analyzing that data. So we'll be putting out a report within the next month of that. And this is the 21-22 school year data. And in the same breath, we'll be launching the new kindergarten readiness survey. And we're back on the same track as we were before COVID. We had delayed, we continued to collect kindergarten readiness survey data through COVID years. but we pushed it out like till like January. It was like way late. But now we're back on the track of that the kindergarten teachers must complete the kindergarten readiness survey within the first 6 weeks of school. And so they'll be getting that information pretty soon. And we'll collect that information again and hopefully have the kindergarten readiness survey out sooner than the next school year. So that schools and kindergarten teachers can utilize that data that they have submitted. So just heads up on that one. The provisional early childhood and early childhood special ed licensing waivers that the Agency of Ed has been approving it's been well received. I think we have 23 individuals out there who are on provisionals right now, who are on those provisionals, and they are acting as the lead educator in private pre-K programs. So that's all good news. We're starting the second cohort of the provisionals and hope to get another number. I mean, we've already have some really high interest in it. So again, it's another way, another path for individuals who don't have their early education license from the Agency of Ed to work in private programs through a provisional. So as they work on their coursework. So that's been I think real advantage to our early childhood folks out there. I think that's it.
Thanks, Kate. I would say it would be great to have on the agenda, have an opportunity for you to review the kindergarten readiness survey when it's ready on a future agenda would be awesome. Sure. And I just want to acknowledge that Kate, at a previous meeting I was in, announced that she will be retiring in December. Is that true, Kate?
I am.
So
yes, we are developing a succession plan for the early education team that I sit on, and I'm the early education manager for that team, as well within our student support division, where our team sits. So yes, it's kind of sweet and sour. I'm really happy, glad to move on. I will certainly miss all of this work, but it's not that I can't be part of it either, as a private.
Yeah.
I was going to say, well, Sherry, that's not something that we speak of right now.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Just kidding.
But I wanted to, Kate has been with, I don't remember a time when Kate wasn't doing this work. So I just wanted to acknowledge that we need to savor the next 4 months or so. But it doesn't mean it's necessarily goodbye for sure. So
yeah, no. I've been in the early childhood field for 40 years. Isn't that crazy? When you
it's great.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So good. So thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Sherry.
And then I just wanted to open up, anyone have any updates? Janet, I was thinking specifically of the Vermont AYC conference. You might want to put a plug in, and I just go for it.
Yes. So yeah, the annual Early Childhood Education Conference hosted by Vermont AYC is scheduled October 13th and 14th. We'll be back in person at the Hilton in downtown Burlington. Early bird registration goes through September 7th. When you register, you also are signing up for your workshops at the same time so that we can plan for space. And there's a couple of them that have caps on the number of people that can join. There is advantages to registering early, in addition to just having us feel confident that people are ready for coming to our in-person event. I'll throw a link in the chat too, that we also have a a number of awards that we're planning to give out this year. We are giving out the Early Childhood Educator of the Year award. As has happened in the past with support from Let's Grow Kids, and that process is already underway, and we have a review committee ready to look at applications later this month. But we also have a number of other awards for like a Student of the Year, Vermont AYC Member of the Year, sort of a Lifetime Distinguished Service Award. I can't quite remember what that one's called at this moment. But I'll throw a link in the chat, and we are definitely looking for nominations for those awards. And I think it's going to be a really great time to honor and celebrate folks when we're back together. These are different awards than we used to give. We sort of took the break. We took a break from giving the awards while we had virtual conferences. So it felt like now was the time to reboot the categories and the nomination process. So I hope people will take a peek at that as well. So I can throw both of those links into the chat for folks.
And Janet, did you say it was the 50th anniversary of Vermont AYC?
Oh, I didn't mention that. It's also another important reason to come celebrate in person is that it is the 50th conference, and we're going to have some of the folks who were involved in putting out that conference 50 years ago be with us. So I think it'll be really exciting. We're going to have a reception on Thursday night. We also have we have the awards luncheon. We have the membership. We're going to have our annual membership meeting. We have we had great keynotes. And we had really robust responses from workshop presenters who were super eager to get back to, offering this training in person. Please, so we would love to see everybody there.
And I just want to mention, and I'm going a little bit rogue on Nicole right now because I think I forgot to mention this when we met, but one of the days of the Vermont AYC conference conflicts with this meeting, the 13th, I think it is, of October. So it will be unlikely that we will have this ELD meeting. Instead, maybe you want to sign up to go to a day of the Vermont AYC conference. And we'll either, we may schedule another sort of invitational meeting like we did in June, or maybe we'll just transition to having the next meeting be in November. But I just wanted to mention that as well. Any other updates that the committee members want to share? All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. Janet put those links in, so nominate away. We thought this meeting might be a little bit shorter. So we didn't want to overpromise, but it looks like we have delivered and given you about a half hour back of your day. And thank you for the conversation, and anything that, if you want to provide Beth some more feedback after you've reflected and been able to get a written copy of the policy recommendations. They're certainly looking for feedback, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.